A voice you trust with inside information you need. This is Special Order with Louis Gohmert.
Hi, this is Louis Gohmert, and I'm here with just a dear friend, a brother from another mother. So I love this guy, James Golden. It's okay to tell him you're also Bo Snerdley, known as Bo Snerdley when they're doing the Rush Limbaugh show. But James is here in D.C., and we were going to talk about the problem of violence and these protests that have turned violent and the people that have been hurt, including the police. It is a huge problem. And when you see a video like that one of George Floyd, I can't imagine anyone not realizing you don't do that, that you just don't do that. And the thing is, the good cops know who the bad cops are. They know who is a problem, and they don't want to ride with them. They don't want to be their partners. But what happens is when the department goes after a bad cop, the unions come in and they defend them. Sometimes they're able to get them fired, and then they get reinstated. But on the other hand, I do know of cases where a cop is a whistleblower to a bad cop at the top, bad top cop, and the unions come in and defend them. So I do want good cops who are whistleblowers to have a defense. But it seems like, James, there ought to be a way, like something that will trigger a peer evaluation by the other peers that would go in the records so that everybody can go, yeah, this is a bad cop.
Yeah, Louis, well, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for the work. I love it that you do, always. Now,
You're
you know
always
what,
too kind.
Louis, this anybody that watched that video, of course, was enraged, right? But, and I think people, I'm going to address what you said about the cops in a minute, but I think people kind of want to know, okay, so why are these people out in the street protesting? That happened. Yeah. This is kind of a one-off. No, it's not a one-off. This stuff has been happening, especially in black communities, as long as there have been black communities, right? I could call names for you. Go look them up. Thomas Shea, Robert Torsney. This guy Torsney, when I was a kid, was coming out of a housing project where there had been some kind of a call for the police. It was resolved. He was walking out with his partner, came across a 15-year-old kid, said a few words to him, pulled his gun out, shot the kid in the head, point blank range.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so all-white jury, Queens, New York.
Wow.
Let him off with temporary insanity. A year later, he walks out of Creedmoor because they say this guy has never had any mental problems since the time he's been here. So he got away with murder. Thomas Shea murdered a 10-year-old, got away with it, acquitted. I could go on and on. Wow. You could go, growing up in New York, you can go through Abdul Louima. You can go through the guy that the cop mistaken for a person that hit him in a nightclub in some kind of fracas, took him to the 70th precinct, shoved a broken broomstick up the guy's rectum, left him on the floor bleeding. Took years. You can go through on and on and on and on and on and on. I could sit here all day and go through these cases. And so finally, people have said, enough of this bull is enough. Excuse my language. But that's it. That's the level of rage. Enough is enough. Now, on the other hand, what is not being addressed is the other culture. You have a culture inside many black communities in America where there's total disrespect for police. All you have to do is go back through the F the Police songs that came out back in the 90s by you remember that? F the Police.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember?
Absolutely.
Like, okay, this was further back, shoot pigs and all of this stuff. And so on one hand, you have this culture within the police where a small minority of bad cops do things and commit murders and other crimes that harm people. And by the way, not just black people, because more white people are killed by police every year than black people, but that never makes the headline. You have a case in Texas where they covered it up. where it was the same, almost the same kind of thing as George Floyd, right? So, but anyway, you have
I think that was a knee on the back.
a knee on the back. The guy
forget
30
how-
times, 30 times, you're killing me, you're killing me.
Yeah.
And they killed him, and then the DA covered it up, allegedly covered it up.
Like dismissed charges.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you also have a problem with the black culture, where inside some of black culture, you'll be careful when I say this, because I'm not attacking all black people, obviously. But there's a, and y'all ain't throwing me off any shot. I don't care what you do. I don't care. You're not canceling my culture. So anyway, but there's a problem, because you go up glorifying gangsterism. You glorify, in the whole hip hop community at one point was about gangsters. And I'm sorry for the rough language. I already used one bad word, but these are the words that are out there. They talk about gangsters, hoes, bitches, and all the rest of this stuff. And cops, you grow up with this stuff inside communities, inside your media, playing this stuff constantly to kids from the time they are born till the time they're adults. These anti-police messages, that becomes part of the culture. So then, if you're also teaching that criminality is cool, that is something to be glorified, what happens when your little young thug criminals run up on the police? Are they going to respect them? No. Are they provoking police officers in some case? Yes. I don't justify the murder of a citizen by the police. This is America. We have a system of due process for capital punishment. Police officers are not supposed to be the judge, jury, and executioners of people.
Yeah.
That was my phone making that strange noise. But anyway, but they're not. They're not supposed to be the judge and jury, right? But at the same time, you can't have, like this case in Atlanta. I really feel bad for that cop down there. You have this guy, okay, he's a black guy, he gets out the car, he's a little drunk, he's a nice guy, oh, I'm so nice, yeah, oh, you're just doing your job. And then he takes the officer's taser and starts running, and then turns around and fires the taser at the officer. Okay, here's the news alert. When you take a police officer's weapon and you fire it toward the police officer, it usually doesn't end out well. That's not a scenario that ends well. Yeah. And yet this cop is indicted. I think that's political correctness. So there's a huge problem on both ends of this. There's a problem in the police culture, and there's a problem in the culture in many black communities.
Well, what gets me when you look, and there are a lot of people that have legitimate beefs. I mean, you look at the Floyd family, but they've come out and they said, we don't want this violence to be George's legacy. And then you look at the protesters. I saw a figure, I don't know if it's accurate, 6 out of 7 are white, the protesters.
More than that, actually.
And if you look at some of the things they're doing right up in there, you got white, and I call them bourgeois. I'm sure most of the white protesters don't know what that means, but they're getting up in the face of black cops.
Calling them the N-word, telling them they're pieces of excrement and everything else.
And they're supposed to be there about racism, and they're blatant racist.
Well, the left are blatant racist. By the way, I'm glad to be in the Capitol. I was looking around to see if I could find any Confederate statues, and I don't see any. What happened to all those Democrat statues?
The Democrat statues.
What happened to all of them? Wait, because I never heard of a Republican Confederate. Were there Republican Confederates? I didn't. Were there?
Well,
can somebody find one? I don't think so. So all those, I was looking down here for all those Democrat statues, and some of them are gone apparently, or shame, walk of shame past the Confederate statues. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. A lot of these protesters are young white kids, especially females, and the drag about all this is that you have all these companies that are kowtowing to these protesters. You have all these businesses that want to be like Me Too, not that Me Too, this Me Too, Me Too. I don't like racism. And so they're pouring money. And the result is that Black Lives Matter, I think someone told me the figure is now close to $1 billion that they've scored in. Yeah.
Yeah,
And by the way,
they're
who collects that money?
Marxist-based.
Who collects the
Well,
money?
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't
And
it
where
Act
does it
Blue
get
collecting
spent?
some of it? Act
Well,
Blue Charities is what I heard.
could be.
Act Blue Charities.
Yeah.
Do we know where that money's being
No,
collected? Do we know where the money's
no.
how the money's being spent? Where it's
Don't know
going?
where any of it's
Oh,
going.
I got it.
Yeah. So they're
Let's fight racism.
Yeah. So yeah, that is a critical point, though. You've got to get to the bottom of it. And that's why I keep saying that RICO, the Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations Act, is a way to go after groups that cross state lines and cross international
Ooh.
borders so that you can go after that. Because right now, if they can file in such a way, if they're not a nonprofit where they can cover up a lot of, they don't have to disclose where the money's coming from. And yet, if it's stirring up violence in any cities, doing damage, as we've seen, the arson, the destruction to federal property, and also the loss of lives that's being.
It is horrific.
You've got to go after where this money is coming from, because obviously, and we've talked about it, you've got people behind this that are just evil, that are they're taking a tragic, horrible situation, and then there are others, of course, and they're using those as sparks to create violence. But as the Floyd family said, they don't want this to be the legacy.
Most people don't want this.
They appreciate the peaceful protests, but not all this violence across the country.
I think part of what you're trying to do could be the actual legacy, because this bill that you have or that you're putting together could be a big game changer. Okay, if we have a mechanism that can bypass the unions to allow police officers that should not be on the force to be taken out off the force early, or identify who they are by their peers, I think that would be one of the single most important steps that could come out of this, because it would change the entire way that the police forces across the country are trained to deal with this kind of the kind of situations that they have. If you get rid of these bad cops in city after city after city, the good that will come from that is a total game changer, and can really help bring about some long needed and long overdue change in the relationship between Black communities and law enforcement communities.
Now, there was some things that I think we could agree on. The Democrats here did not consult us, didn't ask us what we thought about this, that, or the other. But I am not a fan of national databases. I despise them. I don't even like stores having my information. But a lot of police chiefs have said, look, we have a problem. Somebody is a bad cop, and they finally get rid of them in another location, and they move, and look, they've got a history. Here's where they work. And there's no information that they ever did anything wrong in their prior employment, and they get picked up by another police department, and lo and behold, they do something wrong again. When it comes to law enforcement, it seems like perhaps a national database where you identify folks where they can't just hop from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, being a bad cop, creating trouble, might not be a bad thing.
It might not. It might not. I don't, I'm not as concerned as big data on some things. I don't care if Amazon knows what I buy and what I make my life easier. I don't care. It just did, actually, because I went on to, with this whole COVID thing, I went on to get a delivery, and they had everything I bought in the past year. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So I just went and picked items. It's like, fine. I mean, yours would be easy. Send them Dr. Pepper. I mean, that's easy. But I think that would be a very good idea. Louis, we got to do something.
We do.
Something has to be done. I like this bill that you've got. I really wanted to move forward, because that is a total game changer.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're not being asked our opinion. We're not being asked for input. I did mention to Karen Bass, and she has always been very gracious to me, but this idea about having peer reviews. And I said, there's things we could agree on if you would just let us work together. And she said she was interested. So hopefully we can have some good things come out of this.
Well, I mean, please pursue that. I mean, outside of this is one of those issues where there needs to be a call for statesmanship on both sides. We have to get this. We cannot continue to let our country go through these. And these spasms happen every 30, 40 years. It just reaches boiling point.
Seems like these are worse, though.
These are worse than I've ever seen it. And I can understand, by the way, I can understand the hostility some people have towards some of these Confederate symbols that are still thrown in their face. I get that. But what I don't understand is how any American would think that it's okay to set fire to a statue of George Washington, or you obviously haven't studied your history. And if you go around the world, there are so very few perfect men or women in our history.
None. Yeah.
Yeah, except
One.
So if that's the case, and if we all have flaws, and if all of our lives are flawed, then what are we going to do? Erase the history of every person on earth? We all have a lot of flaws.
That's right.
And some of them, we're egregious on some people. Like I say, I get a lot of the stuff with the Confederate stuff, but when you start going after George Washington, Jefferson, over in the UK, they're trying to take down the statues of Winston Churchill.
Well, and
Mahatma
right
Gandhi.
here down the street, taking down Lincoln's statue.
Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, shameful.
Yeah.
He
was all for. Yeah.
Right. And then also in England, which I was stunned, they're trying to, some group of these leftists are trying to demand that Penny Lane gets renamed because they think, there's no proof, they think Penny Lane was named for a slave trader whose last name happened to be Penny. And that's enough for them to demand that Penny Lane's name. These people have gone insane.
Isn't Penny Lane in our ears and
in our hearts? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Mike.
Anyway, James, I love you, man.
I love you too, Louis. This has been great. I'm glad you're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And by the way, I heard it. I watched the podcast the other day, and you have somebody that's introducing this podcast. Damn, man, I was like, whoa, that's an open. That's.
With the kind of class that you get out there day after day as Rush's producer, that's quite a compliment.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you.
So good to see you.
Great to be with you.